Yes, yes, Sir Hairless here. Today we are back with a Lara Fabian patron request, so thank you for this one. This is a song called Immortelle, which means immortal, from her Nue Concert. That's the same concert as our last video, Je t'aime, where the crowd famously took over and started singing to and for Lara, I suppose. Lara wrote this song, Immortelle, with Rick Allison just before they broke up, and in an interview, Lara said that this song was a culmination of her will to live, as the title might suggest. Here are the lyrics. There are a lot of them, so have a pause and a read. They're very nice lyrics, I think. A song called Immortal has been very aptly chosen to come at the end of the concert, finishing with undertones of eternity. But, interestingly, she apparently opened this same concert with this song, except that was her playing on the piano accompanying herself, which we apparently don't get in this version. As far as requests go, I've only had this one suggested to me a few times, to be honest. So maybe it's not so popular, but as we know, popular does not necessarily equal how good or nice or emotional a song is. All of these things mean I'm very curious for it. Let's get straight into it. There's Pierre Grimard on the piano.
Si perdu dans le ciel, ne me restait qu'une aile. Tu serais celle-là. Si traînant dans mes ruines, ne brillait rien qu'un fil. Tu serais celui-là.
We've already got the suspensions in there.
Si oublié des dieux, j'échouais vers une île où tu serais. Fragile, je franchirai le pas. Immortelle, immortelle, j'ai le sentiment d'être celle qui survivra à tout ce mal. Je meurs de toi. Immortelle, immortelle, j'ai décroché.
Yeah, nice one actually, this. In terms of comparing to the other performances or songs by Lara I've seen, if you want to see them, by the way, I do have a Lara Fabian playlist in the description below. This is definitely erring on the more rocky side. Rocky, I think, is the word I'll use to describe this if we think about the band, the instrumentation. Just before we pause there, for example, we've got the guitar with the whammy bar. The drums, the percussion playing quite a prominent role as well. Let's go over what we've heard so far. We're about 1.5 minutes in. If you don't want to hear my thoughts, go to the timestamp. Good old Pierre Grimard on the piano. I've been ever so complimentary of him when we've seen other performances from this concert. Nice dissonance. This drone at the bottom, subtle but affirming the key. G minor. But the piano, quite arpeggiated in its nature, it's certainly not chordal. I mean, if we really strip it back to the basics, then yeah, sure, it's moving through chords. I'll get onto that in a second. But it's not. Pierre is using his fingers, his opposable thumbs, to create these arpeggio figures, which allows for what we'd call passing notes. So they are notes that don't necessarily fit within this chord, but because we're just passing through them, they're kind of a bit more allowed, such as creating a slightly funky harmony, but just temporarily before then moving back to the standard chord. Why is this important? Quite simply, dissonance and then resolution. Dissonant chords, these scrunchy chords, they make us go, oh, but then when they resolve back to the standard harmony, things are a bit more normal, a bit more grounded, a bit more convicted in, well, it's different for all of us, how the music makes us feel, I suppose. This chromatic inflection we can hear in what sounds like strings, could be a synthetic keyboard. Exactly the same like we were hearing on the whammy bar on the guitar I just showed. If you've seen my other videos, I like to point out chromaticism. Why? I think it enhances the emotion. Again, this idea of moving into tension and then resolving back and forth. The first verse, let's have a look at those lyrics. If I was lost in the sky with only one wing left to fly on, my wing would be you. Moving lyrics, they're very nicely written, and Lara respects this. She comes in airy voice, gently, no vibrato. Barely singing at this point, no vibrato. When it comes to Lara, we know that she sings in and speaks actually many languages, and the language any song is sung in is quite important, I think. Singing this in English, for example, would transform the sound. Let's listen to how guttural this is because of the French, their type sounds. It's why I find French so difficult. There's a harshness of these guttural sounds which seem to conflict with how soft she's singing. She's whispering. And then the piano comes in. Jum. She has switched to much more smooth legato singing, elongated notes. Now we get the strings coming in higher, the piano maintaining its consistent movement underneath. Lovely rise up and fall by her. I mentioned the idea of chords before. I won't go into too much detail, but why this is very natural sounding is because the chords we've heard so far are following what's called the circle of fifths. That's this thing here. Don't worry about it too much, but basically if you just follow it around the circle and play this chord, then that chord, then that chord, then that chord, things will sound quite natural moving, which they do. We go G minor to C minor, to F, to B flat, and then to sort of reset, we move over here to D, and then they start going background again. G, C. There's our G minor. And then the next chord, moving around the circle of fifths, so we move down 5 notes, from C down to F. With a nice 4/3 suspension in there, which means the 4th note, which is this one here, suspends, causing tension, and then falls down to the 3rd note. And then, if we follow the circle of fifths again, we end on B flat, which from F is 5 notes down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But a prominent note in that chord is this A here. We can see how it clashes with the B flat right next to each other. So within the first 20 seconds or so, we just get a lot of contrast in a somewhat limited bit of music. It's very calm, cool, collected, as we can see. Yet we have these dichotomies, powerful piano part with an airy voice, guttural sound combined with smooth singing, logical harmonies moving around this, but transformed into these weird and funky chords such as this or through suspensions. That was a great example of some strange harmony. I really like this, so rhythmic, an urgency, a vitality to the sound, the aesthetic as well. You know, this is the end of the concert. I can only imagine how knackered Lara must be. She sings to such a high standard, one of the best performers I've ever seen, like for sure. But look at the aesthetic here, silhouettes in the background, Lara herself barely moving. As far as her singing style goes, again, compared to the other performances I've seen, overall, this is quite reserved. Could be just to how the song is. It fits within a certain range, for example. Could be because this is at the end of the concert. She will naturally be a bit more tired. Could be a whole plethora of reasons. I don't know the answer. So I think let's carry on and see what the rest of this song is about. Lovely syncopation in the right hand of the piano. Dramatic.
Immortelle, immortelle, j'ai le sentiment d'être celle qui survivra doucement. Immortelle.
That was a rather dramatic, very climactic moment there, actually. The strings soaring up there. What's that, a top A? An octave above your chorister's typical expected top note. And the backing singers, we can hear them. And we can see how powerfully they're singing, yet due to the mixing and everything, so subtle, so quiet. Which really shows the importance of audio engineering and how it can impact the song. If this was done acoustically, depending on how many other instruments we're hearing and whether they are electric with an amp or not, you maybe wouldn't be able to hear them at all, or they would be significantly louder. With these live performances, I'm sure that there is so much attention to detail when it comes to everything related to the audio. This is music after all, it's what we hear. That fall down in the violins, lovely. Let's go back to where we carried on from. Similar ideas to before in terms of every chord that we're hearing, there are these dissonant notes in there. I don't know if it's just the way my brain is wired, but to me it's the strings that sound the most prominent to me and usually have these funky notes, shall we call them? Naturally, because they sound a bit more sustained if you're bowing. Again, I haven't actually been looking out to see if there are real string instruments there. Can't see any on the stage, so yeah, it must be done through the keyboards or something. But the piano, cha, 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 syncopation galore. Completely contrasting the electric guitar that then comes in with this, well, vibrato equivalent. That kind of sound. And I could go on through every instrument we're hearing or every layer that we're hearing. I'm not going to because there's no point. I'm not really adding any value. Overall, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are so many sounds and so many different types of sounds that we're hearing in a song that does not seem that crazy at a first glance. So I can't tell if this song is fairly simple actually or the complete opposite. I can think of countless examples of a song that one might hear and think, oh, this is really complex, but it's not, or vice versa. And to be honest, I don't really care if something is complex or not. Music is about how it makes us feel. We'll all feel different things to the same bit of music, so there are no positive or negative biases to what I'm saying. What I will say though is I think it's great how well all these sounds combine together. Rocky was the word that I used at the start, like rock-y. Maybe not the genre word you would use if you showed someone this song, this melody, had Lara singing it. But I have learned with Lara that genres aren't really a thing. She can do everything, right? Even on the two different utterances of Immortelle, subtle differences to the way she's singing, and it even affects the vowel sound. Elongated. That's more of an ah sound. And then there's that Lara power coming through. Then we go into that climactic moment we spoke about, and after that, again in the instrumentation in the background, this intense reverb, is that the right word? Which I'm sure is done through an effect on the guitar, possibly a keyboard, but it almost sounds like strings playing. That's the interesting note in that chord, which is a B flat chord. But the note we're hearing is this one, the second note, the supertonic. From a harmonic perspective, this is the bogey note in that chord, the one that perhaps stands out a bit more. So I like how that is the one that has this weird effect on it. And that's where we got to, so let's carry on. If you enjoy these videos or find them helpful, please consider supporting me. Patreon has a bunch of exclusive benefits, behind the scenes videos, additional reaction content, Q&A videos and more. For a one-time donation, you can donate me a hot chocolate at the Buy Me a Coffee link, or become a YouTube member for these groovy emojis and membership badges. And a huge thank you to these lovely people on the screen now.
le ciel, il n'abritait plus l'éternel.
That's low, that's low.
Peur de toi.
Audience clapping along. Naturally falling out of time as it so often does. Roses flying forward, I think. How eerie. I was told by the requester of this song that it's effectively finished now and that the music in the background, quite eerie, continues to play whilst they bow and that kind of thing. I will continue to watch this. I will include in my video as much as I think is relevant. And then I guess we'll go over some final thoughts. But yeah, really interesting. Really interesting. This music is really, really, really reminding me of a song called Syncopes, I think, which is from the soundtrack of a film that was actually released within a few years of this concert. This concert was 2002, the film 1999. The Talented Mr. Ripley with Jude Law and Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow. But I have said, I think in other videos, I think even in a previous Lara video I did, that a lot of music from this time have this same feel, and it's predominantly to do with the harmony chosen, the instrumentation chosen, strings in this case. Anyway. It's like they're going into space or something. Well, there's something quite sinister. The suspensions, ooh. That's a nice end to a concert, actually. Really scenic, atmospheric. I can imagine being there. Obviously, emotions, senses are all enhanced massively rather than watching it online 23 years later. I'm going to find the Syncopes clip now and maybe talk over it a little bit to try and avoid copyright. If you've seen this film, you'll know it's a bit eerie, a bit creepy what happens. Anyway, this is the song in the background. Here's a section with higher strings. But you can hear the same principles, the drone note at the bottom. If we go back to Lara's concert. Same drone notes, you will have noticed they're in the same key. You can switch from one to the other. Suspension, so nice. They actually work really well together. So if you want to go listen to that one, Syncopes from the talented Mr. Ripley. This is even more interesting, the fact that I am thinking of another song, because in this request I received, there was mention of this reminding the requester of a song by Dimash. If you've seen my videos or if you know Lara, it's likely you'll know Dimash. Lara is one of Dimash's idols. In June of this year, Lara is performing in London and Dimash will be a special guest. And as we saw in Immortelle, the ending there took a rather Eastern turn. Underneath, we have the same string motif that we've been hearing until the end. The idea of immortality, eternity, something never ending. I think that's quite self-explanatory. The really interesting parts, though, is Lara, she seems to just be freestyling. And it's the mode she's singing in, the scale that she's using, so the combination of notes. Not standard by any means. It's quite peculiar. So that note, that is a core note of the harmony, but then when she moves up, those notes are not, which is what really gives it a strange feel. Very Eastern sounding overall. And the requester did leave a note for me in this request saying, I think it's quite similar to Dimash's Stranger performance, New Wave. I have done a video on that one. If you're interested, I go into more detail there. But just to show you a few clips, again, a few seconds because of copyright reasons. Quite strange, very similar harmony. And this ending here, similar to Lara's in terms of other people standing on the stage, lights coming from behind. We have this bell type instrument in the background, or kind of like a xylophone, that we actually heard in Syncopes. So I won't go more into that, but I'm finding this really interesting. Similarity to Dimash, Lara being one of Dimash's idols. Was Dimash inspired by Lara for that performance? Who knows, maybe, possibly. But also musical similarities to the song from the film, completely unrelated, but that has other similarities, such as that instrument to Dimash. Like a weird triangle going on here. Look, music is music. I guess it comes in an infinite number of spheres and some things will fit into one sphere, not into another sphere, maybe like a Venn diagram. I am at risk of going on a rant here, so I shall stop myself. But yeah, not really too much more to say. You know, she whispers Immortelle as she goes back and everyone leaves. Very eerie ending. Certainly impactful. I just wish I was there to have seen that live. Let me know if you knew this song or this performance beforehand, or if this is new to you, and if so, how does it compare to Lara's other songs? On that note, I think let's leave that one there. Thank you as always for watching. Would really appreciate a like, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time.